You know, here we go. We're here in the spring, and we're at a really funky time of the year. We're in what I would describe the pre-spawn period. And you know, the water temperature is rising, but it's still in the 50s. And the fish move a lot, right? This is a time when they're roaming, they're heading toward where they're gonna spawn, but they're not quite there yet. You go up in the shallows, you don't see bluegill, you don't see bass. So they're waiting on the outside edges of these areas, like behind this island where they're gonna spawn. There's a couple bait choices for this, but I gotta tell you, my favorite in the mid 50s, mid to low 50s is what we got right now, without a doubt, is a lipless bait. This is a red rip and wrap, red crawl color. And what's so great about this bait is the vast amount of water you can cover. This is if you look around right here, we're on a flat that's miles long leading up to this. And on this flat, there's small ditches that run throughout it. So this is the kind of bait that I can cover a tremendous amount of water until I get a bite or two, until I locate my first fish. Then I could power pull down, I could slow down, and I could start to hit him with other baits. But as far as a search lure, this is one of the best baits out there. The other thing is people assume this is only for grass. That's not true. Right now, this lake has no submergent grass in it whatsoever. Out on these ditches, we've got stumps, we've got little spots of shell, and of course, we got a lot of cypress knees. And this lure is just as good in areas without grass. You know, retrieve-wise, there's the one thing that I always try to keep in mind on a retrieve is to make that lure do something different, to make it change direction. And I hardly ever make a cast and just wind steady the whole way back. My normal cast is I'm gonna make a long cast, I'm gonna let that bait get down for a second, and then I'm gonna start winding it in, but I like to change up the retrieves. Two of my favorite ways, one is called a yo-yo, which is letting the bait hit the bottom, pulling it up, reeling your slack in. Letting the bait hit the bottom, pulling it up, reeling your slack in. Letting the bait hit the bottom, pulling it up. That yo-yo retrieve is really, really good when the fish are lethargic. The other one is a long cast where your retrieve's more steady, but I'm gonna throw kicks into it. With my reel, I'm gonna throw speed kicks into it and rod kicks to get that bait to change direction. 90% of the bites that I get on a rip and wrap happen as that bait's running steady and it falls, or it kicks up, or it stops for a second. So you always wanna change direction on that retrieve. You know, the other thing are little modifications and tricks to trigger that bite. And I wanna show you this. We've got two VMC, these are the hybrid treble short shanks on here. The one on the belly, you're gonna say, yeah, I know about that hook, but look at the one on the tail. This is a VMC bladed hybrid treble. It's the same thing, it's short shank, but it has a little blade in between those three prongs. That blade moves, it shines, it flashes, there's a little bit of vibration on the back. And this has really become a big modification for me on all treble hook baits, topwaters, jerk baits, crankbaits, but especially on lipless. That little extra modification can get you a couple extra bites a day. Great bait this time of the year, pre-spawn, when you're in that search mode. I don't think there's a better lure out there. Big one, big one. It's exactly what I'm talking about. Just covering water. Big one, oh my gosh, big one. Big one. Yeah, don't you do it. Yeah, that's a beast. Yeah, stay on there. Stay on there. Yeah, got her. Oh, got her. Look at that. That is a giant. It's exactly how effective this lipless bait can be in the spring. Look at that thing. Pre-spawn, when you're not sure exactly where the fish are at and they're not shallow yet, coverage. You're using a lure to cover a lot of water. No better bait than a lipless. Rip and wrap number 7. And I want to show you something. I'll get this front hook out. I want to show you how much I like this brand new VMC bladed hybrid treble. I want you to look at this. These hook so good. Look at this. There it goes on the rear treble, that little blade, and you saw how much of the bait was in that fish's mouth. It's a little extra vibration, it's a little extra flash, and as you rip that, you saw when it hit, I was steady reeling it, and I just kicked it a little bit, and that fish ate it. Let's let it go. You know, I love this technique this time of the year in the pre-spawn. You know, the equipment's pretty specialized when I'm throwing this bait. I like a longer, more parabolic rod. This is a rod I designed for Abu Garcia. It's an Ike series delay rod, and this is 7/6, but the action is real critical. This is about a 60-40 rod. About 40% of this rod is very soft, real tippy, but about 60% of its backbone to fight those big fish. So I want a little bit of tip. The reel, you know, depending on the situation. Here we're on a flat, we're fishing this bait shallow and fast, so I'm using an 8-0-1. But if I was deeper and fishing it slower, I would just drop down a ratio. I'd like a 6-6-1. This is the Revo Ike by Abu Garcia. The last thing is line. In this situation where I'm 0 to 2 or 3 feet and I want to keep the bait higher, I'm using mono. This is old school mono. This is 14-pound Berkeley Trilene Sensation. It's a great line. Mono's great because it keeps the bait high. You know, one last thing, you know, when I finally get that bite and I finally catch one, we just caught a nice big one, first thing I do is I stomp on those power poles. I stomp on my button, my poles go down, because a lot of times this time of the year, when you catch one, there's more in that area. You'll find a little ditch or a little patch of rock, or there's something key about it. So I hardly ever catch a fish and blow past it. When I'm fishing a rip and wrap like this in the spring, when I catch that fish, as I'm fighting it, I pole down, I'll land the fish, put it in live well, release it, and I'll make 2 or 3 more casts back to that same area. And a lot of times, I'd say more times than not, you're gonna get a second bite from that same spot.